Hola, estudiantes. I hope you had a good day in the beautiful sunshine. I just got outside. Sorry, I'm a little late because I went for a little walk. But I'm going to read this. Is an anthology of true stories. And I'm going to read you one called Tarantula Heaven by Montgomery. So there are no other illustrations, just that first one right here. But this is a true story about a tarantula. Here are some sounds you do not want to hear in the jungle. The sound of crumpling paper. In the Amazon, this usually means carnivorous ants are pouring from a tree. The sound of crackling bark. In Borneo, it's a clue that an orangutan is trying to push a tree down on top of you. And neither do you want to hear about a shout from a man who studies tarantulas for a living, a man who is not easily disturbed, a man who is only 50 yards away, but you can't see him for the jungle, uttering with great distress and alarm an unprintable expletive. An expletive is a swear word. Particularly when it is followed by the thud of 230 pounds of spider specialist hitting the ground and then crashing down a slope. This is a great beginning of a story. The week before Thanksgiving, we were somewhere off trail at the Tresor Reserve, our second day in the rainforest of French Guiana. With photographer Nick Bishop, I was researching a book to be titled The Tarantula Scientist on the work of then Ohio-based arachnologist Sam Marshall, whose distressed exclamation had just reached our ears. "Sam," I called, "are you all right?" Silence. The day before, Sam had been telling us this forest was more benign than the beech maple forest of Ohio. There are fewer mosquitoes, no poison ivy, and far as fer de lance, that's the most common snake here, a species whose bite likely won't kill you, but would require multiple skin grafts to fix. I may have stepped over 500 of them, but I never see any. Maybe he had found one at last. Seconds passed. Then matter-of-factly, Sam spoke again. "I found a wasp's nest." He found it by smacking his head into it. The nest was at face height, about 6 inches long, and looked exactly like the dead leaf to which it was attached. About 150 unhappy black half-inch long wasps were swarming around it. You might think Sam would keep an eye out for wasps, as if for no reason other than self-preservation. There are the half-inch long solitary wasps that like to sip your sweat, which you notice when you lower your arm and the one in your armpit stings you. Then there are the huge, horrible black pepsis wasps, as big as hummingbirds. These slow-flying monsters attack tarantulas, paralyze them with their stings, and lay eggs in the still living spider. Their larvae hatch and eat the spider's flesh, and then there are more. But Sam really paid them no heed. "I was so focused on Theraphosa, I didn't see anything else," he explained. You can get that way when you're searching for giant spiders, especially when the species in question is as magnificent, as surprising and mysterious as the Goliath bird-eating spider, Theraphosa blondie. This is the largest spider on Earth. It can weigh 3 times as much as a mouse. Think of a quarter pounder without the bun, but with hairy legs that could cover your face. That's pretty big. Such a creature deserves widespread fame, and yet so little is known about it that despite its name, no one even knows what it eats. So it's called a bird-eating spider, but it doesn't really eat birds. Although in one of its earliest scientific descriptions, the spider was depicted eating a songbird. No one knows if the Goliath actually killed it or whether the bird just dropped dead and the spider scavenged it. Only twice have scientists ever seen Theraphosa blondie kill and eat anything in the wild. Once it was a worm, and another time a primitive amphibian-like creature called a caecilian. No one knows how long Theraphosa lives, although some of the more than 800 species of tarantula can live for 30 years. No one even knows if this is the largest of all spiders, so often sold embedded in lucite as curios, is endangered by the practice or endangered at all. Its populations might be thriving or crashing. It's important that people find out. And it's important that people care. These were among the many reasons I was there in French Guiana researching this book for kids. The best readers in the world, and animals' bravest champions. Thank you, readers. My other reasons? Sam's science was cutting edge, and the work was thrilling. Some might say too thrilling. Why don't you write about kittens? One of my mother's friends shopping for a book for her granddaughter asked me. Few of my friends understood why I would want to spend a couple of weeks purposely seeking large, hairy spiders. But going into this trip, I had had only one fear, and it was in direct opposition to the sentiments most people commonly express about such a venture. I was worried that we wouldn't find tarantulas. Up until Sam's wasp encounter, our day had been going quite well. We were in Borneo at just the right time. Mid-November is the end of the dry season in this tropical country. The spiders are more active now, Sam said. The forest around us was as hot as breath, alive with the songs of frogs and the calls of birds. The most auspicious sound to Sam's ears was the three-toned, off-key wolf whistle of the screaming pia, a creature whose calls occur so close to the emergence of the spiders that Sam calls it the Tharophosa bird. Sam had given Nick and me a simple chore. Let's divide and search for holes with big, hairy legs. There were plenty of holes to search. Everything makes holes in this red, shallow, bauxite-studded soil. Armadillos, toads, wasps, lizards, tortoises, snakes, possums. But the holes of Tharophosa are unmistakable, usually located beneath a branch, a root, or a stone. The ovoid entry looks like the mouth of a little cave and sports a welcome mat of spun silk. They're regular little Martha Stewarts, Sam said to us. It's best to hunt them going uphill because the holes are pointing up at you, Sam said. If you slip downhill, he advised sensibly, you'll eventually crash into a tree and stop. This was good because the slopes were quite steep, often more than 45 degrees, and the ground was covered with giant wet leaves, rotting logs that give way under you, and the ankle-twisting holes of armadillos. But rolling and crashing into some of the trees here would be unwelcome. One of the palms here, as well as one of the vines, is covered with sharp spikes, and any wound in the tropics gets instantly infected. Before long, though, and without spilling any blood, we had located our first burrow, the entrance to the underworld, as Sam called it, and then another. Sam showed us how to lure a tarantula out of its hole by wiggling a twizzle stick in the burrow, kind of twisting a stick in the hole. Normally, tarantulas spend the day in their silk-lined retreats, waiting until night to emerge. But of course, tarantulas are ready to seize a good opportunity. In this case, she grabs the stick with her pedipalps, the pair of food-handling legs at the front of the head, and thunders out of her hole, her 8 walking feet, each tipped with 2 hoof-like claws, or tarsi, pattering loudly on the leaves of the forest floor. The sight of her takes our breath away. She is not even full grown, but her head is the size of a 50-cent piece. Her abdomen is as big as a quarter. She is covered with rich reddish-brown hairs. Even immobile, she is very animate, alive with senses we can only dream of. Though her 8 eyes are nearly blind, she can taste and smell with her hairs and feet. That's a pretty neat adaptation, isn't it? Her curved black fangs glisten as she pauses, tense and alert, inches from the mouth of her burrow. I have seen wild lions in Africa, tigers in India, and bears in America and Asia. None were more magnificent predators than she. No fool, she realizes the twizzle stick is a ruse. That means it's fake, it's not real. Quick as a shutter, she scoots back down into the hole, but not as deep. We can still see her lurking just inside of the mouth of the burrow as we leave. As we thud by her, she waits, fearless, patient, eternal as the jungle itself. Later, I asked Sam, why didn't she retreat deeper? Why should she care, he answered. She's Tharophosa, queen of the jungle. So, of course, minutes after the wasp stings, Sam swallowed some Benadryl and we continued on. We had an appointment with the queen. There are plenty of tarantulas more venomous than Theraphosa. There are lots of spiders more venomous than any tarantula. In fact, not one species. Do you remember what venomous means versus poisonous? Poisonous is a defense, right? And venomous is to kill a prey. I think that's right. In fact, not one species of tarantula has a bite that is deadly to a healthy human, adult human, though there are some whose bite can lay you up for a week. In much of South America, most of the tarantula species would rather stun you than bite you. And this is actually a powerful deterrent to most tarantula predators, who tend to be smaller than humans and stick their faces farther down tarantula holes. Using rear legs to kick hairs off the abdomen, the spider counts on air currents to carry the hairs to the nose and eyes of its assailant. Because the hairs are covered with tiny barbs, they can be itchy and irritating, causing a wise predator to back away from the tarantula burrow without exploring any further. Even the crabbiest and most venomous tarantula won't kill you. Yet the spider inspires a deep primal awe like we would accord a tiger or a lion. A lot of people are afraid of spiders. This creature has eons more experience at hunting and killing prey than lions or tigers do. Here is the predator primeval. Tarantulas are among the most ancient of spiders. They've lived on Earth for about 150 million years. Long before the existence of saber-toothed tigers, cave lions, jaguars, tarantulas were the top predators, not only of their fellow invertebrates, but of the early mammals too. Though surely the little Jurassic mammals ate arthropods. Like spiders, the early tarantulas were almost certainly hunting these mammals too. And still in the leaf litter of the primordial rainforest of French Guiana, tarantulas reign supreme. French Guiana is tarantula paradise. About a dozen species of tarantula are found in this patch of jungle the size of Indiana. Every day we sought and found them, and in so doing, we rode a catapult back to the beginning of time. In Tresor Reserve, each Theraphosa brought a new thrill, even to Sam, who has seen so many. The first one showed us only her legs before she retreated, but even that glimpse was exciting. "Come out," Sam pleaded with her. "I want to meet you." And then to Nick and me, "You know what I really want? An endoscope." It's a special camera that you use to go down and look into people's stomachs. So he wants to put it down into the cave of the tarantula. Once he said he had worked with an Australian spider specialist who had procured this instrument for probing human intestines and had threaded it down the twisting dirt burrows of a different spider species. "And at the end," said Sam, "you get to see the spider biting the tip of the endoscope." Certainly not the usual view through the instrument. Sam shined his flashlight back into the tarantula hole. "She's hunching down," he said, thinking, "Oh, I really wish he'd go away. Oh, now she's kicking. She might be kicking hairs. Can you hear her hissing?" Sss. The brave creature. My heart swelled with admiration. Blind, cornered in her hole, this spider was ready to take us on. Three monsters whose combined weight was over 2,000 times hers. These spiders fear nothing. Just being with them enlarges the soul. At another tarantula hole, a spider courageously fought off Sam's twizzle stick. "Strike, strike, strike," Sam narrated as he tried to entice the bird eater out. "She's reared up and not very pleased with me. I don't think she's going to come out and play." But that was okay with Sam, because at that moment we were mapping burrows, and hers was the fifth we had encountered in just 2 hours. One tarantula had seized his stick and run 10 inches out of her burrow, then reared up and showed us her shiny black fangs. In another, we found a detached leg at the mouth of the burrow. Tarantulas can regrow lost legs. Ooh, that's like lizards regrow their tail, right? And at times, when a leg is injured, they will pull it off and then eat it for energy. Could you imagine pulling off your own leg and eating it for a snack? But this leg, a trick that many a human athlete would envy. But this leg was part of an exoskeleton that the spider had freshly molted. Molting is when they get rid of their old skin and grow a new skin. Like all spiders, they shed their external skeletons and grow new ones. We found the freshly molted spider down deeper down the hole. Even the black fangs had been lost. The tarantula started newly minted white ones. I rather wished I could molt my own skin at the end of the day. Drenched in sweat, covered in dirt and bug bites, I ached with exhaustion. So did Nick and Sam, and yet we could not have been happier. Ah, what a job, Sam said to us. Can you believe we get paid to do this? On a different day, we sought other species of tarantula. We visited a place called Le Grotte, the caves. We went there with Jep Moonen, a Dutch-born botanist so skilled he once identified a brand new species of plant growing in a Kmart parking lot and bestowed upon it the species name Kmarti. To reach the caves, we had to pick our way through the tunnel of rock over slippery boulders. Happily, I noticed there were many handholds to steady us, but alas, we were told not to use them. Here, Jep told us it was a great place to see fer de lance, and it wasn't a good idea to touch a rock beneath which one of the snakes might well be hiding. Sometimes you might see two in one day, Jep said cheerfully. Indeed, we would be lucky to see them until they bit, causing pain so excruciating that victims often beg to have the affected limb amputated. That means cut off. We saw no fer de lance, but we saw another spectacular creature, the bird the color of a traffic cone who looked like he was wearing a helmet made of half an orange on his head. The male cock of the rock, one of the most dramatically colored birds in the world. But this, of course, was not what we were after. Carrying heavy water, camera gear, and scientific supplies, including an unsheathed cooking knife Sam used for digging that would surely impale him if he fell on it. That means we crossed the 100-yard-long floor of the entry cave as carefully as we would cross a minefield. Finally, through the tunnel, we saw the great cave, our destination, yawning in front of us. It looked exactly like a giant Theraphosa burrow. But we were after a much smaller quarry. The loose soil on the floor of the cave was dotted with little volcanoes of dirt, the burrows of the small, cute holothele. Though these are among the most common tarantulas in French Guiana, they are in a spider family no one understands, said Sam. Another species in this family does an elaborate tap dance as a courtship ritual. Few people think of spiders as being that sophisticated, but Sam has discovered that tarantulas' lives are far more complex than anyone ever expected. Some tarantula mothers tenderly care for their babies, for example. Talk about family values, he said. One species of tarantula even holds hands at dinner. Mother and all of her spiderlings. They feed while touching one another's tarsi, often in a circle around their shared prey. It's like they're saying grace before they eat. Here in the cave, we had found a sort of nursery for holothele, although this species does not show maternal care, and the mothers were long gone. I felt a rush of tenderness as one young holothele dashed out of his burrow, hoping to escape Sam's waiting pill bottle. He collected 7 of the youngsters to bring back to his lab in Ohio in his checked luggage, which is perfectly legal. French Guiana doesn't protect its invertebrates. While airlines back then banned pen knives in our luggage, we could carry on as many tarantulas as we wanted. One night, we went out in search of one of the most beautiful and spectacular of all spiders, Ephebopus marinus, the skeleton tarantula, so named for the stunning yellow stripes on its hairy purple-black legs. Sam says they make the spider look like it's wearing a Halloween skeleton suit. Earlier in the afternoon, while it was still light, we had located their burrows, distinctive, 2-inch wide, silk-lined funnels leading deep into the red rainforest soil. Sam marked the burrows with orange flags, and then we left. We would need the flags to find the burrows with our spotlights that night, for it is only at night when those spiders emerge from their silky. We're surrounded with the breath of the forest, the pulse of insect calls and frog song, the occasional quack of a black-crowned night heron. We thread through the jungle paths, the shapes of monstrous leaves reaching like hands toward us. Occasionally, a firefly floats by. Beetles zoom past our headlamps. Moths crash crazily into our faces. In the trees and on the ground, we can see the sapphire glow of the eyes of the family of spiders known as tenants, or wandering spiders. The light-gathering reflectors in their eyes evolved separately from those of the night-hunting mammals, but for the same reason. Sometimes you can see so many of them that the ground looks like a landing strip, all the spider eyes lighting up. A female wandering spider carrying her babies on her back looks like a piece of gaudy costume jewelry. The spiderlings, hundreds of eyes glowing blue, the fire of twinkling gems. But night can be treacherous too. It's easy to get lost here, even in the daytime. A single leaf can be as big as a canoe paddle and obscure an entire path. Now, in the darkness, we find ourselves blundering into the bush. We're going the wrong way. We're sweating in the heat. The mosquitoes are swarming. But finally, we find the right turn and we see the orange flag Sam had put there earlier. We look down, and there, illuminated in the beams of our headlamps, is the skeleton tarantula. About the size of a child's hand, she sits regal and alert on her throne of silk, just outside the mouth of her burrow. The yellow stripe on each of her 8 legs reminds me of the tail of a comet. She is a starburst from the heavens, a star fallen to earth, and it makes me think of Christmas and the wise men's star. I feel so humbled to stand in the pulsing dark before this spider with yellow legs, this creature who tastes with her feet, who sips her prey after killing and liquefying it with her venom. All the horror and sorrow I've endured in my life now seems worth it for this timeless, alien, electrifying moment. After a trip like this, you go home, you want to talk about spiders, but people ask you what it was like there. What did you eat? Where did you stay? How was the shopping? The food was unremarkable. Oddly, for a tropical country, there didn't appear to be any vegetables anywhere, except in cans. The one store we visited for food smelled faintly of gangrene. That means of infected something. Rotten things. I can't remember much about what I ate except for the Benadryl and aspirin. In fact, this was a major food group for Nick and me. There are a lot of insects in the rainforest. We gobbled these drugs to quell the itching. The forest was full of ticks and chiggers. Sam's chigger bites outnumbered his freckles and made his legs redder than his hair, but the chiggers weren't as annoying as the ticks. There were at least 2 species we could identify, one large, one small. The small ones were the worst because they were so numerous and so hard to see. You found them dug into your skin in odd places on your body. Nick found one on the sole of his foot. Have you ever seen a tick? Una garrapata? I found one in my palm and another one morning inside my nose. Unfortunately, an overzealous baggage inspector had confiscated my tweezers on our first stopover in Guadalupe, forcing me to use a new use for credit cards. If you sandwich a tick between your Visa and your phone card, it creates just the right leverage to remove the creature. It was the only use I found for my Visa the entire trip, as it was rejected at the pharmacy in town. The pharmacy was where we did our only real shopping. Instead of postcards and t-shirts, we bought aspirin, Benadryl, and pure rubbing alcohol, because now all our mosquito, tick, and chigger bites were infected, especially Sam's. I blamed his frightening fever on infected bites gone systemic, but it could have been something else, because before the end of the trip, his right ear had swelled shut. At one point, I wondered whether I too had managed to acquire a tropical fever, because I ached relentlessly every night. I dismissed this as merely muscular exertion from our day-long bush bashing, the strain of carrying heavy water and equipment up and down the slippery, hole-pocked rainforest slopes all day. I didn't know it at the time, but part of the problem was that my elbow was dislocated. At the end of each day in the field, we were sweaty, dirty, sore, and covered with so many ticks that toward the end of the journey, I didn't even try to remove them all. When I got home, I counted my bites. There were over 100 of them, each crowned with a little cone of yellow pus. And where did we stay? We spent our nights at a nature center, which had rooms with beds and blue mosquito nets, bathrooms with flush toilets and cold rainwater showers. Blessedly, there was no TV, no radio, no newspaper, no war, no terrorism. The room came complete with fauna. One night, as I sat on my bed to my delight, I watched a small and probably non-venomous snake crawl out of my shoe. The shower hopped with toads and frogs. Little geckos sped over the walls, clinging to the plaster with their toe pads and calling out to one another in voices that sounded like a coin tapping on glass. The mosquito nets over our beds and the walls were splashed with their red, green, or blue excrement. That's poop. The color varying with what the lizard had last eaten. I fell asleep each night to the calls of jungle frogs, the watery trills of the nightjars, and the sound of my talented friend and colleague Nick in his adjacent bed beneath his own mosquito net, scratching his bites. This sounds like heck, my friends would tell me when I got back to the States. Hell no, on the contrary, for me, it was heaven. And that is Tarantula's Heaven by Cy Montgomery. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.